Hello, welcome everyone to the Beacon of Light podcast. And you might notice we're in a little bit different area, and that's great. We're thrilled to have our wonderful guest, Anne McCoy. And before we start talking to her, we're going to jump into this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we are back. Welcome again, everyone. We are thrilled to have you here. And Anne McCoy, she is an author, and she has written a book called Starved. Wow, this is going to be interesting. So she's a fictional writer, and she has a little background story about all of these things, which is great. So before we start really diving into the book, Anne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am a mom of four. My husband and I are both authors. We've been writing for a long time. We've written together sweet romance novels. And recently we decided to try out a new genre. And I dove into this book and world of Starved. It's a young adult dystopian romance. So something I've always loved to read, but it's a new adventure for us as far as writing goes.
Wow, it is really new to create an entire world and then have characters running all throughout it. And so I have a question as a writer. When you create your world, your dystopian world, do you have everything really mapped out or just kind of some bullet point ideas? How do you get that started?
So I usually start with a big bulletin board, and I map it out on these little 3x5 cards, and we go plot point to plot point, and I create character sheets, and I have a story Bible. It's pretty much a whole universe before I sit down to really write.
That is excellent to see, because sometimes when you can see the map out, you then can add what you want, maybe then in a place that's maybe not as clear. And those pre-writing opportunities are amazing. They really can make the difference. And I know other writers, seat of pants, whatever pops in, and it can work. I really think it depends on how your mind works and how it's structured. So that's really fun. So tell me a little bit about your characters.
So Stars, it follows a set of twins. The first twin, Lily, who is our main character, she has type 1 diabetes, and she is smart and funny and amazing, and she has this twin brother who adores her but also wants to be independent and on his own. And we follow them as they are on the brink of an apocalypse. And it was really fun to watch and write this dynamic of two siblings getting to know each other as they have to survive, as resources kind of start to run out. And it was fun to write. As a mom, it was especially fun to write a brother really learn to care and stick up for his sister, and vice versa.
Wow, it is really interesting. Now, you said you're a mom of four, so I have to ask the question. You possibly have models in your own home for maybe at least parts of these characters. Is that right?
Absolutely. So when I started writing Starved, it was like 5 years ago, and it was before our oldest was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I put the brakes on that as we, navigated this new normal. And about a year into that diagnosis, and as we started to, feel like we had things under control, I decided to get back to the book. And as I read it, I realized it was missing something. And I really wanted to represent type 1 diabetes in an accurate way. And so I knew that the main character needed to have that challenge, and that was part of her. And so that's been a huge driving force. And then, of course, my children, how they interact with each other. It's really, it kind of just comes in as you write. You write what you know. And it was easy to write when my kids would fight. I could be like, okay, this is how siblings fight, or this is how they get along. And yeah, so they played a big part. I wouldn't say they are the main characters, but a lot of what I wrote came from what I lived.
Isn't that interesting? You just heard the best fight ever. Now this is my no, my, and you're like, oh, yeah, keep going, keep going. I gotta write this down. I'm just teasing. But
The mom encourages the fight.
sometimes writers, we have a lot to observe. And I know I can remember and recall many times conversations that I didn't have, but I wasn't saying I was listening in, but maybe I was. Okay. Anyway, the point, you're watching, you're observing, how do they connect? Are they physically close? Are their eyes always distracted? And whatever, right? Because you've got to build the picture. That reader needs to know, well, what are they seeing? What's the scene? Paint it out, make it a movie, whatever. So it's really fun to know, like, you're in control of writing and creating all of that. And how fun when you have live models to kind of show you what's happening. I think that's a really fun thing. So you said 5 years ago you started this whole series, Starved, and the character was missing something, and now you've added that diabetes part to the character. So before that was added, your thoughts on these twins and the world they're going to enter into. Who is like the villain? What do they fight? Who are they fighting against? What's happening?
The villain is the world. It's they live in this world where there's been a virus that has attacked plant life, and because plant life is dying, it affects everything, and they are fighting to stay alive, and that was super scary before the diabetes aspect and components, but adding that in, now we're running out of insulin, we're running out of food. It put me as a mother of a type 1 diabetic in the worst case scenario, and I had to navigate my way around it, and it was scary and also very therapeutic and hopeful to know that we can find solutions.
I think what you said there is that you can find solution. It's probably pushing your mind to these breaking points and then thinking, okay, well, I can't kill off my characters. We got to find a solution. And in
Mhm.
finding that, even though you're the one writing it, right, you can create whatever solution there. And then you have reality, you have your real world that, you know, we have medications and we have opportunities to do great measurements and not always having to wait for the poke, and you can do, I don't know what they're called, but they're under your skin. You know the whole thing. I don't have to teach you. You get it. My point is that with all the technology, it's not like easy. No. There's still monitoring, there's still observation, there's up and down and question. And then you're working with a teenager. Mom. Because your your idea, or for the characters, and I'm sure for that brother in the story, the desire is, are you okay? You look pale, you're sweating, did you get, and all these questions. And sometimes it puts the character as the disease, and we forget that it's a real person because we're so worried about the health, right? So
Yeah, that's a interesting point for sure. I think we tend to do that a lot.
it's true. It's just part of it in our in our desire to help. We almost really label that part is what's happening, and we're like, oh, we don't want to have all of that be the main focus. So tell us a little bit about your character, Lily, and what makes her so exciting to read about or bored or whatever.
Lily is quirky in that she's kind of she's not a loner, but she's comfortable in being alone. Um, but she also realizes the importance of having friendships, and so there is that desire to belong, and yet she feels comfortable not belonging, not being around people, and so she kind of has this inner battle of feeling like she needs to be included, but also she enjoys doing things on her own. She's a scientist. Her dad's a chemist, and so she follows in his footsteps. And her favorite things are going into work with him to work in the lab, or to sit down and quietly and read a book. And yet, when she's in social situations, she realizes she doesn't fit in, and that hurts. And I think that's hard for her. I think it would be hard for me as well. And she she does a lot of self reflection on how to reconcile the need to be alone sometimes, but also be a part of a bigger group and find happiness with others.
I like that comfort in times alone, and the you still want to be connected. That's the desire of all people, is that belonging and connection. And it's so fun in fiction to see and write and be kind of that leader of all what can happen. So how many books are in this series?
There will be three. Currently, we have book one out, Starved, and then we have a companion novel, Burned, and that follows Cal, and it's told from his perspective.
So
And
who's
we get
Hal?
oh, sorry, Cal is Lily's brother, twin brother.
Hal. Okay. Lily and Hal. Got it.
Right.
Okay. So now the second book, or the companion book, is kind of focused on his character, I should say development or whatever. There's our writing term. But anyway, so his idea of his perspective on things. Hal. Oh, awesome. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. So tell me the name of that book again.
That one is called Burned. And then we have book two, which will be both perspectives. That one comes out in September, and it goes to my editor in a couple weeks. So, so that's coming out.
Wow. How fun is that? We have someone here that says, I need help coming up with ideas for writing my own book. So let's ask that question, is how do you come up with ideas for books?
I think you had a great idea earlier when you talked about observing my children. Like I do a lot of people watching, not in a creepy way, but you can watch people and you just get ideas, make up stories in your mind. Why did this person act this way? Why did they respond to this? What sort of backstory brought them to this point? Or I also actually Starve, the book I'm working on now, the sequel Sifted, actually started from a dream I had. Um, and so it was just one scene that ended up in the actual book. But that one scene, I remember waking up and being like, I want to write that. And so I think you can pull it from anywhere. You just add your own twist to something, and it can become your story. But just, I think the key is to just start writing. Whatever idea you have, just start writing, and it just becomes.
I love that encouragement to write. The magic of writing is writing. I'm sorry. It's that
It is.
simple. And that makes it really fun. So with your book, Starved, um, this world, there's a virus, it's destroying all of the plants. So are they on a search to find a cure? And I asked that because you said that her dad is a chemist and works in a lab. So I'm wondering, is that important? Hmm.
Yeah, that's super important. Dad is a chemist and he works for the government, and he has been asked to. He's one of the research teams been asked to find a cure. There's many, but his team is very close, and Lily and is very interested in being part of that finding the cure. And the cure is not just for plants, but it's also for people, because when the plant virus kills all the plants in a certain area, it mutates and then infects humans. And so they're trying to stop that as well.
Wow. That's I think with all of us experienced a worldwide pandemic, it's creepy.
Yes. And the creepy part for me is I started writing this before we had this pandemic, but it did change the book quite a bit after living through a pandemic, realizing this is this is actually very scary, and this is what may or may not happen. I got a little bit of a real life example, unfortunately.
True. And I find that really um, fascinating that you started, getting your ideas before and then watching possibly the influence of that experience also add to the fear factor of the book. Really interesting. So, if someone was to pick up your book, does it have any hope or like are they just all dead? Like what's going to happen?
I know it is a dystopian. It sounds so sad and awful, but I think it's in those darkest times that you find hope. I think the two main characters, Lily and Cal, are perfect examples of grit and resilience and of seeking light in a dark situation. Um, I That was the whole reason I wrote the book. I remember with just in my own life with my daughter's diagnosis, I remember being so scared and nervous of this unknown that the idea of just seeking hope and seeking light, I wanted to share that it's not just going to come, but you have to look for it. That happiness and joy is a choice, and it's not always a circumstantial thing. And even when we are surrounded by light, you still have people who are filled with darkness, who are sad and lonely despite the great situations around them. And so I hope that this book, as you see these characters in a dark space seeking light, that it inspires people to seek their own light and to try and choose joy even when it's hard.
Very true. And I feel like anytime we go into that dark place, I think we're naturally built to try to find a light. Now, I mean, I've been into many caves and gone into the depths, and whether it was the tour guide or different caves, and you turn off all light, you can feel the muscles in your eyes stretch and stretch and stretch. Like there's got to be something there. I know we're gonna find some light somewhere. And then
Mhm.
when you realize it's not there, there is a moment of panic, worry. Now, if you're on a tour, you're like, okay, they're going to turn it on. It'll be okay. You have that knowledge. But up until that point, there's still just a little bit of, "Mm." Then I've been in caves where they've just done a tiniest pinpoint of light, and everyone knows exactly where it's at because we are drawn towards light. So in these dystopian novels, the whole time tragedies and trials are going on all around us. Why is the character still pushing through? Because of hope, right?
Mhm. I love
Mm,
that.
that is really cool stuff. Okay, so with Starved, is there anything that you want to share with our audience without giving everything away that we haven't talked about tonight?
One really fun aspect in Starved is the romance. I think a lot of times you hear dystopian and you don't think romance is possible, right? But there's two romances actually. Lily and Calvin have these romantic interests, and it's I don't want to give anything away, but it's really fun to see them work through these romantic interests, these crushes, and see how they navigate them, and see how they fall in love, see how maybe they fall out of love, how they. It's just fun to see. I think as a young adult, as a youth, we often there's just so much possibility and hope, and that's often lost in the dystopian world. But you can find it again in romance, and so having that romantic element just really makes the book lighter, makes it fun, and they were my favorite scenes to write. Writing these kids fall in love. So
It is so fun to do all of those things that you mentioned. Well, I can't wait to read it. I have not yet had much time to do a lot of different things right now, but I really I really enjoy kind of the escape and knowing that in the end there's going to be hope. And then the how and the why. I'm one that I just allow the ride to happen. I don't have to stop and figure things out. I just want to enjoy. That for me is reading. I just enjoy that part and I love the surprises. And I think it's so interesting where other people are like, "Oh yeah, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it." And I'm like, "Oh, oh good for you." No, I'm just I'm just going to enjoy this. Makes it fun. So, with all of your reading fans out there, is there anything else you'd like to share with them about more upcoming books? The one in September, maybe?
yeah, September. I'm excited. So the book that's coming out September was actually the first book written. I mentioned earlier I wrote it because I had a dream of one scene in the book, and I don't want to share it, but maybe once it's released, I'll share a post or something about what scene that is. But it is something I've been waiting to have out for years and years. I'm so excited to get eyes on it, to get it out in the world, and um, I'm excited for it. And then we will have book three, which I forgot to mention, that will be out in 2025, and that will be the final book in the series. So stay tuned for that as well.
Awesome. So as you can see that Anne McCoy, she has a lot of great things coming. Please follow her. And where is the best place to find you?
You can find me on Instagram at author Anne McCoy. You can also find my husband and I. We do a lot of this together. If I'm writing, he's editing heavily, or vice versa. But we're both also on Facebook as Matt and Tiff Knight. And then a great email for us is that authormt@gmail.com.
And that's running on the ticker right there, so you guys can all see that. So make sure that you look at that and contact them if you have any, questions or oh, one idea just popped into my head. So, who like your age group for reading these books? What kind of is the range?
I would say 12 to 90. 12 to whoever's still interested. I've got a bunch of neighborhood girls reading right now that are like 11, 12, 13. I think that's the age. The main character is 16, so and it's all clean. I'd say PG. I don't think book one even gets PG-13, so it's appropriate for
Awesome.
all ages.
That is really refreshing because some plots and storylines are like, wow, and then you're like, oh dear.
Yeah. As a mom to four kids, I really wanted it to be something they could read, and they have many many versions because I'll read to them and ask them what they think. But I definitely a huge fan of clean fiction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for being here. Again, Anne McCoy, her information is running on the ticker underneath, and the book tonight is Starved. Now, we have the blog that's up on apriltribejuke.com, so you can grab more information there, the things that she's written, and kind of gives a little more background with that. And also, you can go to Amazon and grab this book. Again, contact her through the information on the bottom. And we hope to see you all again next week for another Beacon of Light podcast. Thank you all for being here tonight. We'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.